The muffled sound of measured footsteps was heard in the long, dark tunnel. Just a few months ago, Sam couldn't even imagine how much the world in which he had to learn to survive would change. The many dead, bloody bodies of people, brutally murdered, that he saw every day, over time ceased to evoke horror and other emotions in him, and were replaced by indifference. As Sam passed another dead zombie, the thought that everything that was happening was like the end of the world became more and more strong in his head. A few minutes later, the hero found the door leading to the exit, and decisively pulled the handle, opening the door. After which, without thinking, he stepped over the threshold. Once outside, Sam stopped. The northern lights, which had appeared for the first time several months ago, involuntarily caused delight every time. That night, as soon as it appeared, many creatures similar to werewolves from myths appeared in our hero's city. Because of this, people had to hide in safer shelters than their homes, but not many survived. Relying on luck, Sam has managed to stay alive so far, so today he decided to test his fate by hiding from the werewolf in his makeshift shelter. Passing close to where Sam was, the monster heard a rustling sound and turned around, trying to determine the source of the sound. Realizing that the boy's careless movement had attracted the monster's attention, he began to pray that it would head in a different direction. A mouse that suddenly appeared caught his attention. He didn't understand why the mouse had gotten so close to him, but the next moment a brilliant idea ripened in his head. After apologizing to the animal, Sam threw the mouse straight towards the werewolf. She flew a few meters, landing right in front of the monster, not noticing the huge shadow hanging over her. However, the werewolf's loud roar attracted her attention. The next moment the mouse took off, trying to escape from danger. Sam breathed a sigh of relief as he saw the monsters retreating back. After waiting a few seconds, he decided to explore the situation by imitating the sound of birds. When after a minute no one appeared, the hero left his shelter and headed towards the nearest store building. Once inside, the guy realized that he was incredibly lucky today, because no one had ever visited this store before him. Taking the cart, Sam began to carefully examine the contents of the shelves. He was very happy when he found jam with a rare taste. Having put the jar in the cart, the hero remembered that he needed to buy food for his pet. Having found himself at the right shelf, he thought for quite a long time about what he should take, and did not notice someone else's presence. Hearing someone squeak, Sam turned around and saw the werewolf he already knew, holding the mouse he had caught. He began to slowly back away, trying not to provoke the werewolf. He suddenly threw the mouse away and also slowly began to advance towards the guy. At some point, the werewolf's eyes turned red and he lunged at his victim. But Sam had nowhere to retreat and he needed an urgent plan. Without thinking twice, he took off his backpack and unzipped it, intending to get something out. The next moment, the hero joyfully exclaimed that he had a gift for the werewolf. The guy held a snow-white puppy in front of him, who was ready to happily stand up for his owner. The monster stopped, looking at Sam in bewilderment, who was expecting some kind of reaction from the werewolf. A few moments later, the werewolf's eyes turned red again and he lunged at our hero. The next moment, Sam told Snowball to aim straight at the monster. After this, the puppy was enveloped in a white glow, and powerful streams of air lifted the werewolf up, turning his body into ice. A few seconds later, his body was broken into many pieces, after which the hero and his pet headed towards the exit of the store. A few hours later, Sam returned home safely. While sorting through the things he had obtained today, the boy praised Snowball for his help, and said that he would definitely receive his reward. The puppy himself did not tear himself away from the packed box of food that interested him. The hero noticed Snowball's interest and said that he took more tasty food for him. Taking out 2 cans of food, he turned to the puppy and asked what he would choose: canned food for dogs or canned food for cats. After looking at the treats offered to him, Bai again became engrossed in his box, losing all interest in his owner. Sam was curious about what had caught the puppy's attention so much. When he took the box and found out that it was dietary fiber powder, the guy looked at his pet in bewilderment. A few minutes later, a satisfied Bai was eating the delicacy that had previously interested him. The hero watched in disbelief as the puppy actively ate weight loss food intended for girls. Studying the inscriptions on the box, he remembered that Linda also loved this brand and was planning to stock up on something similar. Remembering this, the guy's mood worsened, because it was his fault that Linda disappeared on that fateful day. Our hero really liked the girl, and he finally decided to confess to her. In the evening, he arranged to meet her in a secluded place on their island. They walked slowly along the seashore. Sam was very shy and did not know where to start. Linda sensed the excitement coming from the guy and asked why he had called her here. This question took our hero by surprise, and he could not give her a clear answer, silently opening and closing his mouth. Without waiting for an answer from him, she turned around, calling him a fool. Suddenly, something in the sky caught her attention. The happy girl pointed to the sky, telling Sam to also pay attention to such a beautiful phenomenon as the northern lights, which was completely uncharacteristic for their area. Without taking his eyes off the girl, he nodded in agreement, saying that it was very beautiful. At some point, her face flushed and she looked at Sam. Suddenly she stopped and said that she had liked him for a long time. The hero did not expect to hear a confession from her, and, not believing what had happened, asked again what she had just said. Taking as much air into her lungs as she could, Linda screamed that she liked him and wanted to be his girlfriend. Sam was very happy to hear that his feelings were mutual. He was going to tell her that he loved her too, but a severe headache that appeared at that moment did not allow him to do so. Linda noticed that the guy suddenly grabbed his head and asked worriedly if everything was okay with him. Suddenly a strange glow surrounded her. Feeling something strange, Sam raised his head and looked towards Linda with horror. The girl tried unsuccessfully to break through the invisible wall that surrounded her. When the hero touched the invisible fence, he was struck by a strong electric shock. Due to the pain piercing his entire body, the hero began to slowly lose consciousness. When he woke up, Linda was no longer there. Sam thanked Snowball for always helping him, because without him, the hero would have been killed long ago. At that very moment, the wolf cub felt some kind of threat. He jumped onto the sofa next to his owner and began to growl into the void. Looking at Snowball's strange behavior, Sam realized that someone dangerous was approaching them. In a matter of seconds, he approached the wall and carefully looked out the window to scout out the situation. He didn't like what he saw there. A lot of werewolves were approaching the house. Suddenly, one of the monsters burst into the room, breaking through the wall with its powerful body. The situation that had developed caught the guy by surprise. He never expected to find himself alone with a werewolf in his own home. The hero didn't have time to do anything before he was attacked by the enemy. Bai jumped out of Sam's fallen arms and stood up to protect him. The guy didn't understand how the werewolves managed to find this place so quickly. The next moment he spat out the accumulated blood. Sam assumed that his internal organs might have been damaged, which would be very unfortunate because more werewolves came. Looking around the room, he was sure that he would not survive this time. Sam shouted at Bai to run away as quickly as possible because they couldn't survive together. But he was not going to leave his master in trouble and rushed at the enemy, enveloping him in icy air. Looking at this, Sam tried his best to shout to the puppy so that he could save himself. But Bai stubbornly ignored him, fighting with the werewolves. His own helplessness in such a situation deeply wounded our hero from the inside. He shouted again at his pet to go away. Hearing the despair in his master's voice, Bai turned around. But he had no intention of leaving Sam to die here alone. He was determined to protect him at all costs. The next moment, the werewolf attacked him, and Bai jumped into the air, avoiding the blow. However, he was unable to dodge the claws of another werewolf. Sam watched in horror as the wounded Bai fell to the floor. The guy crawled on his elbows towards the puppy's motionless body. Picking up Baya in his arms, he said that she should have listened to him and run away. At the same time, the werewolves were slowly approaching their prey. The hero had already come to terms with his death, and said that at least they would go to heaven together. After that, he pressed Baya closer to himself, leaning his forehead against hers. The next moment, the room was illuminated by a bright light. At the same time, Sam found himself in his subconscious. There he saw a painfully familiar female silhouette. The guy slowly approached the girl, not believing his eyes. When he had covered the distance between them, Sam hugged his beloved with tears in his eyes, saying that he had been looking for her all this time. But contrary to his expectations, Linda replied that their meeting was not at all a reason for joy. Turning the girl towards him, Sam asked excitedly if everything was okay with her. In response, she quietly said that if he had not taken her to that ill-fated place that day, everything would have been different. The next moment, Linda raised her head and said angrily that if that had happened, she would not have died. Listening to her, he tried to object, saying that she was wrong. In response to his words, the girl smiled and said that if everything was as he said, then he was obliged to prove to her that he was not a weakling. At that moment, our hero's body was enveloped in a blue glow, and he began to slowly rise from the floor. His eyes were blazing with rage. Sam was determined to get rid of all his enemies. A moment later, one of the werewolves ran towards him. Suddenly, Sam's pupils became vertical, like an animal. He held back the werewolf's onslaught with his bare hands, preventing him from injuring himself. At some point, the monster's hands began to be covered with a thick layer of ice, which spread further across the body with each passing second. Without letting go of the monster's hand, Sam jumped up, becoming level with his opponent. The next moment, he sank his teeth into the werewolf's body. From the pain of the torn flesh, the monster fell on his back. The hero was glad that he had finally managed to show his strong side and confront the enemy on his own. At the same time, Linda's gentle voice whispered to him to kill everyone who stood in front of him without any hesitation. The guy rushed at the two werewolves standing in front. Time seemed to stand still for the monsters. The speed at which Sam was moving was too great. He literally dealt with the enemies in a second, rushing past them with lightning speed, only a trail of blood from the slain monsters following him. Bai slowly approached her master from behind. Sam came to his senses when he heard the puppy calling him. The hero looked at his hand in bewilderment. He could not understand where the strange sensations in his whole body came from. Bai came closer to him and grabbed the edge of her master's jacket with her teeth. Noticing that Bai was trying to pull him somewhere, Sam looked at his pet, asking what she was trying to do. In response, Bai let go of the fabric and headed somewhere forward, hinting for the guy to follow her. A sudden bright light made Sam cover his eyes. The image of Linda, dear to his heart, appeared before him again. The next moment, the happy girl rushed towards him, embracing Sam. She was glad that he had returned. The guy was also happy to be reunited with his beloved and followed her example, hugging her. They stood in this position for several seconds, which for Sam seemed like several hours. At some point he opened his eyes, returning to reality. Looking at his palms, the guy did not understand what had just happened to him. Raising his head, he saw the headless corpses of monsters in front of him. Sam couldn't believe that he did all this. Suddenly he remembered how he met Linda in his dream. Immediately after that, images of how he personally dealt with the werewolves began to appear in his head. The memories that came crashing down on him gave him a severe headache. A few moments later, the pain subsided, and the hero tried to analyze what had happened and understand how exactly he had managed to do all this. All this time, Bai stood next to him, sadly watching her master's torment. Sam looked down and met his pet's eyes. By the time they got outside, the night was gradually drawing to an end. The hero stopped, looking sadly at his now former home for the last time. Sometime later, Sam and Bai entered another house, which the guy had prepared in advance for such an occasion. Having looked around the room filled with boxes of supplies, the hero was sure that this would be enough for them while they were recovering. Sitting on the floor, Sam pulled Bai onto his lap, telling her that next time she wouldn't have to risk herself to save him. After which he began to treat her wounds with a napkin previously soaked in alcohol. A few minutes later, he noted that Bai's condition had improved greatly, and his own wounds no longer seemed so serious. Afterwards, Sam bandaged Bai's body to prevent infection. He lifted her up and, looking into her eyes, told her to always listen to his orders from now on. But in response, the puppy bit him on the hand. The guy looked at Bai with resentment, not understanding why she treated him this way. Sometime later, Sam came out of the shower. Running his hand over the fogged glass, he noticed that his wounds had indeed healed very quickly. He looked at his body carefully for a few more moments. Suddenly, the hero punched the neighboring wall. The tile beneath his fist crumbled and a hole appeared in the wall. Sam was surprised to realize that not only was the pain gone, but his strength had also increased significantly. Coming out of the bathroom, he noticed Bai sleeping nearby and assumed that the changes in him were somehow related to her. Taking another towel, the guy headed towards the puppy, after which he carefully covered Bai with a towel, trying not to disturb her sleep. Sam took a pillow and a blanket and lay down next to her, thanking her for the help she had given him. As soon as he closed his eyes, the hero immediately fell into a deep, restless sleep, in which he again desperately searched for Linda. He heard her cries for help from different directions, but no matter how much he looked around, Sam could not understand where she was. The guy wandered in the darkness, guided only by the cries of his beloved. Bai woke up and looked at her master with sadness in her eyes. For several minutes now, in his sleep, he had been calling for Linda. Deciding to help him out a little, Bai jumped out of her seat and crawled under the blanket next to Sam. She lay down next to him, touching her forehead to his cheek. At some point, her fur began to lengthen, turning blue. A few moments later, a beautiful blue-haired girl was lying next to Sam. Noticing that he felt a little better, she closed her eyes, falling asleep. The rays of the sun breaking through into the room woke up our hero. He rubbed his eyes sleepily, realizing that it was already morning. A rustling sound from somewhere to the side made Sam flinch in surprise. The guy looked to the side and was surprised to find a stranger next to him. He tried to understand how this stranger had gotten to him, because he definitely locked the door. As Linda rolled over onto her back, Sam accidentally touched her shoulder. He immediately pulled his hand back and looked at his palm in bewilderment. The next moment it dawned on him that there was a girl lying next to him. Pulling himself together, Sam cautiously asked who the stranger was and what she was doing in his house. The girl sat up and rubbed her eyes sleepily. Sam was shocked when he saw her face. Linda was sitting in front of him. He immediately hugged her, happy that she was finally back. Realizing that he was hugging her bare skin, the hero instantly pulled away from her, and his face turned a deep shade of red. The guy jumped to his feet and turned away, apologizing to her. Standing with his back to her, he told her to get dressed quickly. Linda instead walked up to Sam and began to peer closely into his face. The next moment, to his surprise, the girl licked his cheek, causing the guy to blush. Taking a step back, he asked in surprise what she was doing. Even despite the reciprocity of their feelings, he was not ready for such a rapid development of their relationship. Seeing Sam's face turn red, the girl used her ability and sent a cold blast of air towards his face. This clearly helped, and now, instead of embarrassment, our hero's face showed surprise mixed with bewilderment. He noticed the wounds on the girl's arms and shoulders, and a crazy thought came to him. Sam decided to make sure of this and dispel his doubts. He asked if she was bi. In response, the girl licked the guy on the cheek again. Sometime later, the hero managed to find a box of clothes suitable for Linda. Embarrassed, he handed her the neatly folded soft cloth. He watched as the girl tried to understand what each item of clothing was intended for. Sam exhaled heavily and offered to help her, realizing that the girl did not know how to dress herself. Trying not to look at her, he helped her get dressed. The guy convinced himself that this was not the real Linda, but just little Bai. Even though he tried desperately to convince himself of this, it was really difficult to believe it. Her appearance constantly convinced him otherwise. After several excruciatingly long minutes, they finally finished, and Sam lay down tiredly on the floor, saying that dressing another person was really hard. He was glad that Linda had some spare clothes in the warehouse, but he was tormented by the question of why Bai had adopted an image so dear to his heart. He could not help but perceive her as the real Linda. With each passing day, Sam understood less and less what was happening. As the girl approached him, he turned his head towards her, saying that he wanted to stay in a safe place with her and wait for help. But he had not seen rescuers for a long time, and the situation in other areas was unknown to him. Sitting down, the guy admitted that he was worried about his parents and the real Linda. He looked at his palm for a few seconds, tormented by doubts about his new abilities. Sighing, Sam turned his attention back to the girl, saying that he still knew too little about what happened 2 months ago and where all these monsters came from. Linda looked at the guy with interest the whole time. A moment later, she came closer to him and lay down on his lap. Sometime later, they got outside, and Sam was scouting the situation, carefully studying the neighboring streets through binoculars. He was not happy that the whole area was captured by werewolves. Looking into the distance, the hero wondered where the other survivors might be. His attention was drawn to Linda, who was staring at something. A feeling of uneasiness arose in his heart, and he approached her, asking where she was looking. In response, the girl pointed her finger at a point in front of her, and Sam picked up the binoculars again, trying to figure out what was there. He saw 4 people running away from monsters. Lewis led his comrades, hoping to escape pursuit. But suddenly a werewolf appeared in front of them, blocking the way. Everyone began to panic because they found themselves at a dead end. Pulling himself together, the oldest man in the group shouted that they had no choice but to engage in battle with the monster. The woman asked how he was going to do this when they didn't even have a normal weapon against a strong and agile opponent. Suddenly their attention was drawn to someone's shout from above. Linda used her ice breath ability and attacked the werewolf. In an instant she was covered with a thick layer of ice. Sam finally got rid of the enemy, breaking him into small pieces. He then turned to the team of people and asked if they were okay. They looked in horror at the pair of people standing in front of them, who destroyed the monster with their bare hands. Driven by fear, they ran screaming as far away from here as possible, not noticing the huge shadow approaching them. Sam turned to his partner with confusion and asked why they had run away from them. Suddenly a loud werewolf roar was heard from behind. The hero immediately turned around at the sound. Looking at him, the guy noted that this werewolf was different from his fellows. Looking at Linda, he noticed that she was very tense. At some point, the werewolf began to be surrounded by small lightning bolts. The hero approached the girl, saying that this time they had met a strong enemy. For a few seconds they stood motionless, waiting for the monster to attack. Sam noticed that for some reason his body felt heavier than before. At that moment, the werewolf attacked them, but Sam and Linda jumped up, avoiding the enemy's claws. The guy shouted for his partner to freeze the werewolf. She listened to his words and used her ability. But the monster began to roar, and the lightning bolts became stronger. When the lightning hit Sam and Linda, they were unable to dodge, and a sharp pain pierced their bodies. The guy managed to land on his feet. He suggested that the difficulty in movement was due to the ability of lightning. Sam took a few steps back, realizing that if he got too close to the werewolf, the body would become difficult to control, and they would have to avoid close attacks. He saw no way out of the situation with their current abilities. So the guy grabbed Linda by the hand and ran away from the monster. A few minutes later, they found themselves inside the shopping center. Hiding behind one of the many walls, Sam decided to catch his breath here and kept a close eye on the entrance. The monster followed them and tried to determine where its victim was hiding. Studying the contents of his backpack, the guy came to the conclusion that he did not have any weapons, not even an ordinary knife. Suddenly, Linda handed him something that looked like a knife made of ice. Sam thanked her and took the weapon she offered him. The next moment, he approached the girl and asked in surprise if she could create various objects from ice. Linda smiled and nodded her head. Thanks to the weapon he received, the hero had a chance to defeat the werewolf. At the same time, the monster looked around, searching for its victim. Suddenly, something flashed behind him. When an ice knife flew at him, the werewolf reacted in time and knocked it back. At that moment, Sam emerged from hiding, armed with several ice knives, after which he threw them all at his opponent, hoping that he would not be able to dodge them all. But the werewolf had no trouble cutting the knives flying at him with his claws. After that, he let out a furious roar. The hero's plan was successful. He angered the monster and provoked it to run after him. The hero quickly climbed the stairs to the second floor, luring the werewolf into a trap. The monster was rapidly catching up with its victim, surprising Sam. He didn't think that the owner of such a massive body would be so agile. Looking ahead, the guy noticed that he had almost reached the right place. A few moments later, Sam reached the fence and jumped over it. The monster also jumped after him. Sam had already managed to land on the ice of the skating rink. When the werewolf landed opposite him, the ice under his paws began to crack. Holding onto the railing, the hero asked the werewolf if he knew what a skating rink was. With each passing second, more and more deep cracks appeared on the surface. At one point, the ice under the monster finally broke, and the water underneath it began to turn into a multitude of ice needles. They pierced the werewolf's body, passing through and through, and deprived him of the ability to move. Sam breathed a sigh of relief. They were lucky that there was only one enemy. If there had been several, they would never have managed it. When the girl approached him, he smiled, saying that her abilities were very useful. They smiled at each other, enjoying their victory, not noticing the appearance of yellow bubbles from the body of the defeated enemy. As their numbers increased, Sam noticed this strange phenomenon. He was curious to know what it was, and he touched one of the bubbles. At that moment, several bubbles exploded next to him, and several electric shocks hit the guy in the head. Linda, who didn't understand anything, looked at him with concern. Holding his head, Sam said that something was trying to control his brain. He leaned against the railing to keep from falling. With each passing second, whatever had entered his head grew stronger and tried to drive the guy's consciousness out of his body. Suddenly he growled, and the silhouette of a defeated werewolf burst out of his body. Frightened, Linda involuntarily took a step back. Struggling with himself, Sam told her to move as far away from him as possible. He warned her that he was about to lose control of himself. Seeing that there was no reaction to his words, he shouted at her to run away from here immediately. Despite his orders, the girl approached him and kissed him. He immediately pulled her away from him, asking what she was doing. When the headache came back, the guy asked Linda to listen to him and leave. But she remained standing in place, looking at the guy who was holding back the invisible enemy with all his might. A moment later, the monster took over Sam's mind. After that, he rushed at the girl standing next to him. She didn't have time to react and fell to the floor with the guy. At this moment, the hero managed to regain control of his body for a few seconds. Linda reached out and touched his cheek. The next moment, she pulled him towards her and kissed him. Sam's eyes widened in surprise. When the girl pulled away from him, he felt a little better. Linda noticed how the wrinkle between the guy's eyebrows smoothed out, and his condition improved a little. Having decided something for himself, Sam again pressed his lips to the girl's lips in an awkward kiss. They kissed for several long seconds. The guy felt that Linda had used her frost breath ability. When he ran out of air, the hero moved away from the girl. The uninvited guest left his body, but the next moment he was overcome with excitement. A tired Linda lay on his face with her eyes closed. After making sure that she was not injured, the guy exhaled tiredly and lay down next to her. They lay silently on the floor, listening only to each other's measured heartbeat. Suddenly, Linda pressed herself closer to Sam. He looked at her and smiled tenderly. She helps him every time he is on the verge of death. Remembering their recent kiss, the guy's face flushed again. As if sensing what he was thinking, a blushing Linda used her frost breath on him, after which she covered her mouth with her hand, calling the guy a pervert. He sighed and looked at her with resignation. A moment later, he realized that the girl had learned to speak. Sam asked why she had suddenly taken on this form. The girl replied that she changed because the guy himself wanted it. After her words, the hero became sad. Deep down, he hoped that she could be the real Linda. Based on the information received, Sam assumed that she was able to read his thoughts, since she was able to understand who exactly he wanted to see and recreate the image of this person. Linda confirmed his assumption. He nodded, saying that he should indulge his fantasies about his beloved less. The hero decided to switch to another topic, asking the girl where she came from and why she appeared here. Linda admitted that she didn't remember anything about it. Sam sighed in disappointment and stood up from the floor, after which he angrily hit the wall, unconsciously using the power of lightning. He was angry at the lack of any information about what was happening to his world. When the guy looked at his hand, he was surprised to note that it was the same ability as the werewolf he had defeated. Sam assumed that he got it after he absorbed the monster's aura after it died. Linda came up to him, took his hand and asked if everything was okay with him. Despite his assurances that he was fine, the girl began to lick his bruised hand. He suddenly realized that after her last victory over the werewolf, Linda had turned into a human, and now she had started talking. Grabbing her by the shoulders, the guy joyfully exclaimed that most likely all their changes were connected with the number of monsters killed. After hearing this suggestion, the girl looked at him doubtfully. Sam exhaled and said that they would have to test this theory on their own experience, after which he took his backpack, saying that they needed to move on. But the girl remained standing where she was. Sam turned around and asked why she wasn't coming. She said that if the hero likes her, he should call her Linda, and if not, then bye. The surprised guy stared at her for a few moments. Then he approached her and stroked her head, calling her Linda. A few minutes later, they found themselves outside again. As Sam came around the corner of the house, he warned Linda to be careful. Making sure the path was clear, they moved on. The guy was glad that their fight did not attract other monsters. Suddenly, he noticed a backpack lying on the road. They came closer, and an unflattering picture opened up before them. The guys they saved earlier were brutally killed by another werewolf. Sam knelt down next to the stranger's backpack. He felt sorry that he couldn't save them from something like this. Suddenly, someone approached them from behind and pointed a gun at Sam and Linda, telling them not to move. The hero rose from his knees and, noticing the girl's fighting spirit, asked her not to attack. The boys shouted at the strangers to move away from the bodies of their friends. After which, one of them ran up and examined the dead bodies of his comrades. Richard turned to Sam and pointed a knife at him, asking why they killed his friends. Without waiting for an answer, the boys shouted that he would definitely avenge their murder. The guy frowned, calling Richard an idiot. After that, he used his new ability and sent an electric discharge towards the boys. Richard threw the knife aside and it fell at Sam's feet. Picking it up, the boy said that the wounds left on the bodies of their friends could only have been inflicted by a werewolf. Coming closer, he pointed a knife at Richard, saying that even if there was chaos everywhere now, they should not attack everyone with weapons. The guy who suddenly appeared shouted at Sam to stop and was ready to attack. Linda reacted faster than Sam and rushed to block the enemy's path. She made it in time and used her ice to block the enemy's fire. The hero was amazed that someone could control fire. Pulling himself together, he told Linda that they had to deal with that guy as soon as possible, so as not to attract the attention of the monsters. Then he poured some of his power into the ice barrier. A moment later, the barrier was destroyed. Seeing the lightning in Sam's hand, Alexander was very surprised that two strangers had superpowers. Suddenly, Sam moved from his place, approaching Alexander. A few seconds before the collision, he managed to activate his fire. With each passing moment, the flames grew stronger, and Sam was powerless against them. But Alexander had no intention of weakening his fire to allow the enemy to reach him. The hero jumped back a few meters and watched Alexander for a few seconds, whose flames gradually calmed down. Suddenly, the howling of monsters was heard, attracting everyone's attention. A few meters away from Alexander stood a crowd of werewolves. Sam shielded Linda and, after analyzing the monsters' behavior, assumed that they were not their target. Switching to a whisper, he said that they needed to seize the moment and escape. When Sam turned around and took a few steps, he heard Alexander's voice, who said that he would definitely protect everyone. The boy's words echoed unpleasantly in our hero's heart, and he clenched his fist, holding back the force that was bursting out. He couldn't afford to run away like a coward again. Alexander covered his comrades with his body, waiting for the right moment to attack. Suddenly, one of the werewolves rushed straight at him. Linda immediately froze the monster, preventing it from moving further. Sam, in turn, used physical force to break the frozen enemy into pieces. Then he ran ahead of Alexander and his friends, shouting for them to move as far away as possible. The hero was alone with several werewolves. Dropping to his knees, he fired an electric shock into the ground, striking his opponents. A few moments later, the werewolves fell dead. Sam noticed that using this ability was using too much of his strength. Suddenly, he felt a severe pain in the heart area. Sam didn't understand what was happening and why his heart began to squeeze. Alexander destroyed the werewolf that wanted to attack Sam. Afterwards, he returned to his friends, asking if everything was okay with them. Having made sure that the boys were okay, Alexander thanked our hero for the help he had provided. Suddenly, Greg intervened in the conversation, saying that Sam and his companion had killed several of his acquaintances. Alexander hit him on the head, saying that if that were the case, this guy would not have helped them. Linda noticed that something was wrong with Sam and looked at him with concern. Suddenly, he began coughing up blood and then lost consciousness. A few hours later, the guy began to come to his senses. Opening his eyes, he saw Linda sitting with tears in her eyes. Smiling tiredly, the guy called the girl by name. Stroking her head, he said that he was fine and that she had no reason to cry. Unexpectedly for himself, the hero felt someone pulling his clothes off. He asked Linda why she was doing this, but she replied that she had not done anything like that and put her hands in front of her. Sam lifted his head and saw the stranger lift his t-shirt and examine his stomach. At some point, she sank even lower. Sam's face turned red from the embarrassing situation. He had absolutely no idea what was going on here. Suddenly, the blonde beauty touched his belt buckle and began to unfasten it. Sam, red to the tips of his ears, snatched the belt from her and asked what she was doing. Melissa replied that she was just examining his wounds. Sam replied that he was not injured and did not see the need for this kind of check. But the girl only smiled softly. Afterwards, she stood up and said that in that case, she would not take off his pants if he lay still. Looking at Linda, Melissa asked if she was his girlfriend. The hero only looked at her with incomprehension. The blonde girl took Linda's hand and asked her to help her loosen Sam's belt. Embarrassed, the girl touched her belt and began to unbuckle it. Our poor hero's face turned red again. He felt very awkward when two beautiful girls unbuttoned his pants. Suddenly, Melissa looked at Sam's face, checking his reaction. Seeing his expression, she laughed and said that he was actually quite the lecher. After this, the girl put her hands on his stomach, saying that she hoped that after the treatment he would be just as cheerful. The next moment, a green haze began to emanate from her palms, and Sam felt pain where her hands were. Melissa said that she had healing powers and was now going to treat his internal organs, so he needed to be patient. Suddenly she said that the guy was very lucky. He absorbed a large amount of animal energy and stayed alive. Sam's cries of pain continued for another hour. When the treatment was finished, Melissa sat down tiredly on a chair. She said that she healed all his internal wounds caused by the beast energy. Afterwards, she said that now she needed to go and rest, and Sam and Linda could do whatever they wanted. Having said this, the girl immediately fell asleep, causing the guy to be puzzled. However, the next moment, surprise was reflected on her face that Melissa woke up as quickly as she fell asleep. For some reason unknown to Sam, her face turned red, and she asked excitedly what they were doing there. After which she got up from her chair and ran out with her eyes closed, saying that they could continue and she would not disturb them. The hero, not understanding anything, looked at Linda, asking what Melissa, who had just run away, was talking about. A few minutes later, Linda helped Sam down to the rest of the boys. Alexander noticed the arrivals and said that Sam already looked much better than before. The hero smiled and thanked for the concern. Alexander replied that at the present time everyone needs mutual assistance. Suddenly one of the girls ran up to them and said that she had very important news. They finally managed to receive a radio signal from the city of N. Alexander and Sam's faces reflected strong surprise. Sometime later, our heroes moved to the control room and Anna turned on the recording, from which they learned that since July, mutated animals began to appear in all corners of the world. The city of N also suffered greatly. It was also said that with the help of army forces they managed to bring the situation under control. But due to the disruption of transport and communication systems, rescue operations will temporarily not be carried out. Alexander asked if it was possible to contact someone from City N, but Anna replied that it was impossible. She explained that after the appearance of the laser radiation, the satellite systems also failed. They tried to send a letter by fax, but never received a response. The guy didn't like what he heard and started yelling at the girl to keep sending messages as long as possible. Anna just nodded her head sadly. Sam and Linda looked from the monitor to Alexander. Covering his eyes with his hand, he apologized, saying that he was a little out of his mind. Anna looked at him and said that everything was fine. She would continue sending messages until she received a response from the city of N. Turning around, he headed towards the exit of the room, thanking her for her concern. Finding himself in the corridor, the guy slowly slid down the wall. Sam approached and tried to console him, saying that he shouldn't worry so much because they now knew that the city of N was relatively safe. Alexander agreed that he was very worried about this. He explained that people going out to search for supplies have increasingly begun to die at the hands of werewolves, some even deciding to commit suicide due to the intense pressure. Sam listened to him silently. He himself understood perfectly well what it was like to try to survive alone and not die at the clutches of monsters. Raising his head, Alexander admitted that he was afraid that one day he might simply not be able to bear all of this. Sam knelt down next to him and told him that he should look at it from the other side, because he seemed much stronger than the others. Afterwards, the hero looked at the guys who were running around the hall and sorting through boxes of supplies. He said that in such turbulent times as now, many have to sacrifice themselves, but it is still impossible to save absolutely everyone. Smiling, the guy said that for those whom Alexander had already saved, he was a real hero. After listening to him, Alexander slowly stood up. Afterwards, he extended his hand to Sam and said that his name was Alexander, and he was a teacher at the second school in the city of N, and asked what the hero's name was. Sam shook his hand and introduced himself, saying that he was a student at Beijing University. Afterwards, the hero looked down again and noted that many people here were dressed in school uniforms, and he asked how they managed to get to this island. Alexander, who came out of the adjoining room with 3 cans of cola, replied that they had come here on an excursion, but unforeseen circumstances had forced them to stay longer. Sam asked if he knew anything about the appearance of werewolves. Handing him the can of drink, Alexander replied that he knew little about it. He only knew that on the day the northern lights appeared, many people disappeared. He saw this glow, after which he lost consciousness. While he was unconscious, he was transferred to a safe place. Sam asked how Alexander got his abilities. Looking at him, the guy replied that he himself did not know. He discovered his gift of fire control since Melissa saved him. Looking at the blonde girl standing below, Alexander said that if Sam wanted to know more information like this, he would be better off asking Melissa. He explained that the girl used to work as a nurse at a school, and although she was not particularly talkative, she must know quite a lot of information. Sam asked the guy why he thought that, Alexander replied that she did not disappear that day after being hit by a strange beam. Afterwards, he asked Sam what he intended to do next, but he replied that he hadn't thought about it yet. He just wanted to get out and see, maybe even learn something about what was going on in the world. After listening to him, Alexander invited him to join their group. They would be able to protect each other. Sam was surprised that he was offered to join someone's team. Alexander promised in that case to definitely take him to Melissa. Suddenly, someone interrupted their conversation and asked with displeasure why Alexander was inviting just anyone to join their group. Derek said that their resources were too limited, and they didn't need extra mouths to feed. Alexander ignored these words and wanted to introduce his guests to the man. Derek's gaze settled on Linda. He asked why he had never seen this girl anywhere before. Coming closer to her, he said that he understood the reason why Alexander invited them to the group, and that this reason was the girl. As the man reached out to Linda, Sam grabbed his wrist. The boy glared at Derek and said that he should watch his words. When the hero began to twist his wrist, the man howled in pain and shouted that his uncle was the one who opened this school, and his uncle would not leave Sam unpunished. An agitated Alexander asked Sam to let Derek go because his uncle was really in charge here. The teacher tried his best to calm Sam down, but it seemed like he was paying no attention. A few moments later, when the guards came to them, the hero finally let Derek go. Once safe, he ordered 2 men to deal with his assailant immediately and broke his arms. Following his order, 2 guards rushed at Sam. Derek was confident that his men would deal with the arrogant boy in a matter of seconds. However, everything went against his expectations. Both guards were thrown into the wall by Sam. The next moment, Derek felt a finger on his face. Sam asked who was going to break whose arms here. Alexander watched what was happening in horror and tried his best to calm Sam down so that he would not make a mistake, led by his emotions. But the hero really didn't listen to what the teacher was trying to convey to him, and slammed Derek's face into the wall. When he let go of the hand that was holding the man, Derek's body began to slowly fall down, leaving behind bloody streaks. Sam said that if he behaved like today again, then next time the hero would paint all the walls in this school with Derek's face. After that, he headed towards the exit, telling Linda that they had to go, while a worried Alexander sat down next to the unconscious man, not knowing what to do. When they left the building, it was already night outside. Sam pitched the tent he had found earlier outside, where he and Linda would spend the night. The guy had been staring at his palm for some time now. Remembering today's incident, he tried to understand why he had become so hot-tempered. Sighing, the boy assumed that the werewolf aura was affecting him in a similar way. Looking at the girl lying next to him, he remembered that he had one more important thing to do right now. He must come up with a way to get Linda to break her habit of sleeping naked because her body is too tempting, and he finds it hard to resist her. Sam was brought out of his fantasy when he heard the girl call his name, but he was distracted again when his imagination drew a picture of an embarrassed Linda asking him to warm her up. He approached the girl, pursing his lips for a kiss. Linda used her icy breath to stop Sam from kissing her, after which she lay down on his lap, saying that he shouldn't think about perversions. An embarrassed Sam dried his wet hair with a towel and explained that any normal guy would have reacted the same way if he saw Linda sleeping. The girl blushed and replied that she was not yet ready for this kind of thing. The hero thought about what she had just said. Suddenly, the thought entered his head that perhaps in the future Linda would want this with him. Noticing that Sam was thinking about indecent things again, Linda once again used her icy breath to cool his ardor. At the same time, loud voices were heard from the director's office. Derek vowed to get to Sam and destroy him while the doctor treated his damaged nose. He did not forget about Alexander either, saying that he was just watching his suffering. The man asked his father to send people with superpowers for Sam. France replied that he was just an ordinary boy, and that destroying him in this way would be a waste of effort. Smiling wickedly, the man said that Derek should wait a little. They would deal with him after they carried out their plan. At the same time, Sam lay and thought about his parents. He hoped that they were safe now, because they worked on military bases. Linda was already fast asleep, pressed against the guy's warm body. Deep down, Sam was still unsure who exactly this girl was, Bai or Linda. If it was Bai, then where had the real Linda disappeared to? Raising himself up on his elbows, he pulled the blanket that had slipped off the girl higher. Looking at Linda peacefully snoring, he remembered how many times he had dreamed of spending the night with his beloved. But he would never have thought that it would happen like this. As he ran his fingers through her locks of hair, he thought that no matter who she really was, in the end he could see this situation as the fulfillment of one of his many wishes. Kissing the girl on the forehead, Sam wished her good night. This night has passed and a new day has come to replace it. The birds sitting on our hero's tent sang their songs, waking the guy up. That night, Sam couldn't get a good night's sleep because of the girl clinging to him. He didn't understand how a normal man could fall asleep in such a situation. Covering his eyes with his hand, he asked himself whether this was all happiness or torture. Thinking about what would happen if he lost control one day, Sam headed outside. Once outside, he saw Melissa in the backyard of the school. Approaching her, Sam greeted the girl. She turned around at the sound of his voice and hesitantly wished him good morning. The guy thanked her for Melissa curing him yesterday. Embarrassed, she replied that it was not worth thanking. Afterwards, the girl said that if he had no business with her, then she needed to go. Sam called out to her, saying he wanted to ask her about the Northern Lights. Melissa stopped and asked what they were talking about. The guy explained that that night many strange rays appeared, because of which many people disappeared without a trace. He shared that he also knew that Melissa was the only one who didn't disappear after that beam. The girl suddenly lost consciousness, but Sam managed to catch her before her body fell to the ground. The guy was amazed at the girl's ability to fall asleep anywhere. A few seconds later, Melissa opened her eyes. After that, the girl looked closely at the guy's face and said that, judging by the bags under his eyes, he and Linda had worked hard last night. Cupping his face in her hands, she said that young men needed to be able to control themselves. Otherwise, it would be too much trouble to find a new girlfriend after Linda left him. Sam replied that she had misunderstood everything, and he was surprised at how quickly a person's behavior could change. Melissa smiled, as if asking if this was true. The next moment she clung to him, running her fingers over his stomach. The stunned hero asked the girl to stop. Suddenly he felt the air temperature around him drop sharply. All this time, Linda stood behind the guy and watched the sweet cooing of these two. When Sam turned around, he was met with an angry expression on the girl's face. Linda approached him and shielded the guy with her body, telling him that Melissa shouldn't teach him any weird things. The girl just laughed and asked why Linda was holding him so tightly, since no one was going to take Sam away from her. Melissa fixed a stray lock of hair and said that she wasn't going to tease her anymore. Turning her back to them, she said that she could tell them everything she knew about the rays. But before that, the girl set one condition. Sam asked what this condition was. Turning around, she replied that she wanted to be with him. The hero couldn't believe his ears and asked again if she really wanted to be with him. Smiling, the girl replied that although she had the ability to heal, she did not have the ability to fight, which is why she must find a reliable partner who could protect her. Sam hesitantly suggested that since Alexander also had a strong ability, it would not be more logical to be near him, especially since they worked at the same school, rather than offer something similar to a stranger. Approaching the guy, Melissa poked him in the chest, saying that he had a third-party program. Sam didn't understand what she meant. The girl explained that after the radiation, many people developed abilities. Alexander had only one of many supernatural abilities that awakened naturally. Such people can increase their strength only through physical exercise, but their progress is very slow. Sam is different from these people. He is able to quickly improve his abilities by hunting monsters. This is all explained by the fact that he has a special ability that allows him to make a contract with werewolves. Melissa said that Sam is the same as normal monsters, but he has a program that can absorb the powers and souls of killed monsters. Sam was shocked to learn that he was able to form contracts with werewolves. Smiling, Melissa asked if his sweet companion had told him everything. Turning to Linda, Sam asked with desperation in his voice if she had made a contract with him to give him abilities. Looking away, the girl replied that everything was just like that. Having received her answer, the guy asked where the real Linda was. The girl hesitated, not knowing what to answer him. Melissa suddenly intervened in the conversation, saying that there was a possibility that she was the real Linda. Sam looked at her with confusion. He said that she used to be a normal white puppy. Melissa explained that in fact, no one disappeared from this world because of those rays. It was just that some people became werewolves. The guy found it difficult to accept this, and asked how this was even possible. Grabbing his chin, the girl reminded him of the conditions. The guy had not yet promised to take her under his protection. Afterwards, she let him go, saying that it was time for her to go, and that Sam should think carefully about her proposal. Having said this, she passed out again and fell into his arms. Sam was once again amazed that the girl fell asleep so quickly. Linda ran the end of a strand of hair near Melissa's ear, checking to see if she was really asleep. A few moments later, Melissa opened her eyes. Seeing Sam's face in front of her, the girl blushed deeply again. After that, covering her eyes with her palms, she ran away from there. The guy shouted that he still had many questions, but the answer was a loud slamming of the door. Sam looked at the door in confusion, trying to understand what had just happened. Turning his gaze to Linda, he remembered her words about how she really could be his lost love. Along with this came the realization that all the werewolves he had killed previously were also people. At that moment, Alexander approached them. Stopping in front of Sam, he announced that the principal of this school wanted to see him. Sometime later, the three of them were walking along the long corridors of the school, the walls of which were hung with countless awards and portraits, which Sam carefully examined along the way. Alexander asked his friend to be careful when meeting with the director. Sam said he shouldn't worry about it. The guy promised to try his best to control himself so as not to cause unnecessary problems. The teacher thanked the boy, and stopping at one of the doors, said that they were there. After that, he knocked on the door, saying that Sam was here. A couple of minutes later, they were all already in the director's office. Derek asked what he didn't understand about his uncle's words when he told Sam to kneel. The hero was barely able to restrain himself from attacking Derek right there. But Alexander touched his shoulder, reminding him of their recent conversation. The man standing at the window told his nephew to kneel down, but he became indignant, asking why he should do that. Derek was not happy that he had to kneel before the one who had injured him. France slapped him. He was not a man who was used to hearing objections to his orders. Towering over Derek, he reminded him that he always talked about joining forces and saving as many survivors as possible. But despite all his instructions, Derek constantly creates problems for him. If he were not his nephew, he would have been kicked out of here a long time ago. Alexander tried to intervene and calm the man down, but France raised his hand, gesturing for him not to interfere. Afterwards, the man ordered his nephew to go back to the room and think about his behavior, and he also forbade Derek to leave there without his permission. Derek had no choice but to accept this punishment. After this, he left his uncle's office. Having seated his guests, France asked if they had heard yesterday's broadcast. After receiving a short nod in response, the man said that given the current situation, they were not worth saving, so he planned to expand the size of their shelter and help as many people as possible. Alex intervened and said that since most of them were normal students and he was the only one with abilities, it would be great if Sam joined them. Smiling, the director admitted that he had called them here because he hoped that Sam would be able to stay and help them search for supplies and rescue survivors. The hero replied that although he and Linda had abilities, they were still students and would hardly be of much use. The director stood up from his seat and said that Sam could offer his own terms on which he was willing to stay, and France, for his part, would do everything possible to make them a reality. The man said he understood that Sam and Linda were really taking a risk. As he approached his desk, he suddenly stopped. France said that if so many people had not died when he suggested going to port, he would not ask them to do so now. Alexander responded to his provocation by saying that the blame for that incident lay with him, since it was he who lost a dozen people trusted to him. The director replied that it was not his fault, it was a collective decision to go to the port. Sam and Linda, who were sitting, listened attentively to the conversation and tried to understand what kind of trap they wanted to lure them into. Sam knew perfectly well that the port, teeming with monsters, was the only link connecting their island with the outside world. Knowing this, it is not difficult to guess that they were trapped on this island. The hero decided to intervene in the conversation, saying that instead of wandering aimlessly around the island, it would be best to stay and see the situation. The director replied that he was willing to stay and do everything he could. But if anything went beyond what was possible, they would run into problems. Sam said that he could stay late, after which the man would decide whether he needed the guy's help or not. France thanked him for his understanding and asked the teacher to show the guests to their rooms. After this, Sam and Linda got up from their seats and headed towards the exit. The director was glad that everything went according to his plan. A few moments later, Derek entered the office. He wasn't sure if he should do this to them when Sam and that girl were just mediocre in their abilities. The man just patted his nephew on the shoulder. Approaching the window, he said that when he gains absolute power, image will no longer have any meaning at all. France was sure that the winged wolf would wake up soon. All they had to do was hide as many people here as possible. He firmly believed that the winged wolf would definitely fall into his trap with people as bait. The next day, Alexander conducted a briefing for the students who would go with him on reconnaissance. Sam approached the teacher and asked if he needed help with something. Alexander asked them to bring gasoline, which was nearby. He said that there were no werewolves in that place lately. When Melissa approached him, the teacher asked if something was wrong. She replied that several patients had just arrived, but they did not have some medicines and asked if he could bring them. Alexander replied that most of the medicines in the areas they usually go to have already run out, and for this, they would have to go to a new place. Sam suddenly intervened and asked to give this task to him, because he knows where to get many drugs. Alexander doubted and asked about the guy's condition. The hero replied that he was already completely fine. With a heavy sigh, the teacher agreed and asked the boy to be as careful as possible on this task. Melissa asked him to come with her so that she could give him the list of necessary medications. Sam and Linda followed the girl in silence. The guy decided to talk to her when her other, more talkative personality woke up. Suddenly, Melissa stopped and asked what decision the guy had made regarding their conversation yesterday. Sam looked at the girl with confusion. Smiling, she touched his chin and asked if even with his abilities he couldn't recognize her. Linda used ice breath on the guy, saying that now was not the time for flirting. A few moments later, Sam hesitantly asked if Melissa was truly confident that he had the strength to protect her. The girl replied that with his current abilities, he would not be able to do this. But she knew a shortcut to becoming stronger. Smiling, she made him another tempting condition. By accepting her offer, Sam would be able to quickly improve his skills and cuddle with two beautiful girls at once. The guy gave in to her pressure and accepted the offer. As a reward for Sam accepting her offer, Melissa decided to share some important news with them. She said that the number of werewolves on the island had increased significantly. The girl was confident that with their current strength, Sam and Linda shouldn't have any problems with a small crowd of low-level monsters. But if a guy meets a high-level werewolf with abilities, then it's better for him to avoid combat. Melissa had no idea how exactly they had managed to defeat one such werewolf. But Sam had to be aware of his power gap with such opponents. She reminded him that even if he defeated such a monster again, his soul would continue to fight and try to take over Sam's body. The girl said that if Linda hadn't helped him last time, the guy would have already been under the control of the soul of the monster he killed, and would have lost his own. Sam remembered exactly how Linda had helped him. Now he understood why the girl had taken the initiative first at that moment. Now Melissa had set a task for them, which was to kill as many low-level werewolves as possible, and increase their power by absorbing their souls. The hero objected, remembering that all these werewolves used to be people. Melissa said that werewolves complete the chain of evolution by hunting humans, or capturing souls. That's why if they were attacked, Sam shouldn't feel sorry just because werewolves were once human. The girl said that if he didn't kill, they would kill him. After which she pointed her finger at the area of his heart. Sam wondered if there was a way to turn them back into humans, like what happened to Linda. Melissa replied that even she didn't know that. She explained that because she had received too much information that day, she had forgotten a lot and needed to restore the lost fragments of her memories. Sam asked if Linda could also restore her memory with her help. Melissa replied that she couldn't help with that, but she was sure that one day Linda would regain her full memory. Approaching the guy, Melissa whispered in his ear what he was going to do if Linda regained her memory, and she would kill monsters that were people. Looking at the stunned guy, the girl said that most monsters still like to kill people. After being surrounded by a strange light, a lot of different information began to fill her head. Her mind and body also began to change. She admitted that this information completely rewrote her thoughts and consciousness. If another soul were to inhabit it, it would also turn into a monster, like the werewolves outside. As for Linda's condition, the girl suggested that most likely something went wrong during the transfer of information, and serious gaps appeared in her memory. Turning around, Melissa said that the moment her memory returned, it would be unknown whether she would become a monster that needed to be killed or Linda. Although Sam hated to think about it, he knew perfectly well that Melissa was right. The guy patted Linda on the head, telling her not to worry about it. He was determined that even if her memory returned and Linda turned into a monster, he would be by her side, and they would leave this world together. Sometime later, they set out into the city, looking for the necessary pharmacy. As expected, Sam found all the indicated drugs in the pharmacy he had chosen, and, having collected everything he needed, he shouted to Linda that it was time for them to return. Suddenly, on the shelf next to him, the guy noticed something that caught his attention. Melissa's request to also bring contraceptives came to mind. He doubted whether they really needed to be taken. The inner angel and demon argued among themselves, weighing the pros and cons. Sam himself at that moment covered his eyes with his hand and froze in indecision with his hand outstretched towards the shelf. Noticing the guy's strange pose, Linda took one of the boxes of contraceptives and asked if Sam needed it. The guy came to his senses and replied that it was not necessary, and asked her to put the box back. The girl looked with interest at what she was holding in her hands and asked what it was used for. The guy didn't know how to explain this to her and smiled awkwardly, scratching the back of his head. Afterwards, he switched to another topic, saying that there was a store nearby, and said that he would go there to see if he could find anything useful. The girl watched the guy walk away. A moment later, without his noticing, she slipped the box of contraceptives into the pocket of her dress. It took them only a couple of minutes to get to the store the guy had talked about earlier. He suggested that we split up and look for useful things here. Turning around, Sam noticed that the girl was tense and staring fixedly out the store window. When he asked what happened, Linda pointed her finger somewhere on the street. She said there was a werewolf there that they could kill. Suddenly, Sam covered her mouth with his hand. The guy noticed several monsters approaching and hid with Linda behind the wall of the store. He was lucky, and a couple of seconds later the werewolves headed in the other direction, passing by their shop. Only then was he able to breathe a sigh of relief and relax a little. The disgruntled girl asked why they couldn't just kill them. Sam replied that after all, they were once people too, and he wanted to avoid unnecessary deaths. Linda interrupted him, reminding him that killing werewolves would help him become stronger, and Linda, more than anyone, wanted Sam to live. The guy realized that the girl was very worried about him. He hugged her, telling her that he wasn't going to play the saint to the core, and if he had to kill a werewolf, he would do it to protect the people close to him. The guy asked the girl not to take the initiative in killing monsters either, only when they are pushed against the wall. A sudden cry for help brought the couple back to reality. Sam and Linda ran outside to see two werewolves chasing a little boy. One of the monsters caught up with the child and attacked. The hero watched this picture with horror. The child flew several meters, hitting his back against a flimsy structure with many boxes. A moment later, the boy found himself buried under the contents of numerous boxes that fell on him. The werewolves sensed the newly arrived prey and turned around. Sam and Linda stood a couple of meters away from the monsters. The hero was filled with anger. The next moment, he rushed towards the werewolves, leaving behind electrical discharges. The monster that was closest to the guy did nothing and waited for the right moment to counterattack. When Sam got close enough to him, the werewolf punched him with all his might. But the hero managed to dodge and the enemy's fist broke through the tile. Moving behind him, the guy grabbed the werewolf by the tail. He pulled the enemy's tail with all his might, hoping that he would lose his balance and fall. A few moments later, that's exactly what happened. Sam knocked the werewolf onto his back. The monster growled in helplessness. But a strong electric shock that passed through his entire body prevented him from making even the slightest movement. The next moment, Sam stepped on the head of the enemy he had defeated. After that, the guy jumped up again and ran towards the second monster. Finding himself 2 steps away from his enemy, Sam activated the lightning in his palms. After that, he touched the monster's head with his hand, sending a strong electric discharge through it. A moment later, the werewolf fell to the ground. Thus, Sam dealt with 2 werewolves for literally a minute. Sitting down by the boxes that covered the little boy's body, Sam felt guilty that he hadn't dealt with these monsters earlier, and that an innocent child had suffered. Suddenly he noticed how the fingers of the boy he had taken for dead trembled. The guy started to unpack the boxes, hoping that he would be able to save him. A few moments later, the hero dug the boy out from under the rubble and asked how he felt. The boy didn't respond, only letting out a painful groan as Sam picked him up. Linda quickly used ice to temporarily numb the wound on his back. Feeling a little relieved, the boy began to call for his mother and sister. Sam stood up and said he would take him to safety. The child grabbed the boy's jacket and said that he was fine. But his mother and sister had not eaten for several days, and he had to bring them some food. He asked Sam to help them, saying that they were in the next building. Feeling the child's back start bleeding again, Sam sighed heavily and agreed to help. All the way to the child's house, the guy tried to keep him from losing consciousness by talking to him. He asked the boy's name, but he replied that everyone usually called him Baby. Sam said it was a pretty weird name. The boy explained that his mother cannot call him by his full name, and then more often just calls him Baby. Then the boy asked why he went alone to look for food, and where his father was. The kid replied that according to his mother, his father had gone off to fight monsters, and would return when he was done with everyone. When they got to the right house, the boy said that they had arrived and his mother and sister were on the 3rd floor. A few minutes later, the 3 of them went upstairs. Entering the apartment, the kid pointed to the slightly open door, saying that his family was in that room. Linda immediately noticed the terrible smell that filled the house. Sam laid the boy on the couch and told him to rest there while he took the food to his mother and sister. Approaching the previously indicated room, the guy asked if there was anyone there, but there was no answer. When he opened the door, horror was reflected on his face. Linda, who had come up, covered her mouth with her hand to keep from screaming. Watching as Sam began to unpack the bag of food, the girl said that the woman and child were already dead. But despite this, the guy replied that they had brought a lot of supplies for them and sat down next to the woman. He said that now they don't have to worry and can finally enjoy their food. As Sam placed the last packet of cookies on the bedside table, he said that they would never go hungry again. As he said these words, tears began to flow from his eyes. They left that room only after several long minutes, returning to the living room. The kid asked how his mother and sister were doing. Trying not to sound sad, Sam replied that they were fine. Sitting down on the floor opposite the boy, the guy began to open the remaining supplies and said that his sister had eaten and immediately fell asleep, so there was no point in disturbing them for now. Baby's sudden question about whether his sister was cute caught Sam off guard. Smiling sadly, the guy replied that she was the sweetest girl he had ever seen. After this, Sam helped the boy into a sitting position, saying that he needed to get better as soon as possible to protect them. Our hero handed the kid a spoon with canned meat, saying that he needed to eat. Suddenly the boy started coughing badly. As soon as this attack stopped, he replied that he would not eat because it was too difficult to find food now, and he needed to save. Sam sighed and replied that Baby could eat in peace because he still had plenty of food left. Suddenly the boy asked if he could ask Sam one question, and he nodded approvingly in response. He asked the guy to leave this food for his mother and sister. With tears in his eyes, the kid said that this was how they could hold out until his father returned. Sam replied that he would leave them all the food he had, so the boy could eat in peace, because he also needed strength to wait for his father to return. Closing his eyes, the kid said that it would be great if he had met Sam a little earlier. Then they wouldn't have to go hungry. After this, the boy lost consciousness and began to fall. Sam threw the can of food on the floor. He managed to catch the boy in time. The guy was trying to wake him up so that he would get up and eat. But a few moments later, when Baby's chest stopped rising, the realization of what had happened came to Sam. This child died in his arms. At that moment, many new wounds appeared on his heart, and he screamed from the pain piercing his heart. Linda sank to the floor next to him and wanted to touch the guy's shoulder to comfort him. But suddenly Sam started punching the floor with all his might, shouting that it was all his fault. A few seconds later, the the boy stopped torturing the floor, because the pain from his broken knuckles was nothing compared to the pain in his heart. With tears in his eyes, he said that if it weren't for his naivety and kindness, this child would not have been attacked by werewolves. If he had listened to the distress call a little earlier, since their house was so close to the store, all this could have been avoided. The guy blamed himself for being selfish, and for the fact that he should have taken the initiative to search for and rescue survivors much earlier. Sam knew that the deaths of the kid's family members and himself lay on his shoulders. Linda hugged the guy, asking him to stop thinking about it. But Sam couldn't help but think about it, because they weren't supposed to die. None of this was supposed to happen. Linda sat in this position for a long time, comforting Sam, whose heart that day was covered with deep wounds that would never heal. A few hours later, the hero covered the dead bodies with a sheet. He sincerely hoped that in another world they would be happy, and would never know hunger again. The drawing lying on the nightstand caught Sam's attention. He picked up a piece of paper that had a picture of the kid with his family on it. Looking at this drawing, Sam remembered that the boy believed until the very end that his father would return one day. The guy promised that he would definitely find his father, no matter what it cost him. After which he took a frame with a photograph of a father holding his son in his arms. Sam hoped that this man would be exactly as the kid described him. If this man simply left his family and ran away, then he will find him and kill him. At the same time, active operations were taking place at one of the captured military bases. People managed to lure several high-level monsters with abilities into traps, and put them in cages. France reached out and stroked the captured monster, saying that very soon he would be generously fed. At that very moment, a subordinate approached him and informed him that everything was ready for dispatch. France said that they shouldn't hesitate since with the help of high-level werewolves they could get rid of the police. Derek didn't understand why his uncle didn't let him deal with all the people with abilities. The man replied that it was enough to simply destroy the werewolves. So for now there was no need to show these people to the world. After which he looked at the group of people wrapped in black cloaks, saying that these were his trump cards. At the same time, Sam and Linda came across a destroyed police station. Looking around, the guy came to the conclusion that there had been a fierce battle here and most likely no one had survived. Also looking at the traces of the battle, Sam felt like the werewolves had organized an attack. He didn't understand why so many werewolves attacked a small police station. Suddenly they heard shots somewhere nearby. Several werewolves rushed at their victims, deftly avoiding the bullets. Michael shouted at his men to conserve their ammo and only shoot at heads and knees. Sam watched these people from the side. He noticed that they were simply dressed, cooperated with each other, and skillfully used weapons. Suddenly Linda called out to him and pointed somewhere to the side. A few meters away from them, 2 more people were fighting a crowd of monsters. The girl noticed that several werewolves had climbed onto the roof of the building and were about to attack from there. The hero ran towards the men, shouting that the enemy was going to attack from above, but they didn't have time to do anything and froze, watching the monsters flying towards them. At that moment he shouted at them to lie down on the ground. After that, Linda created multiple ice needles and sent them all at the enemy at high speed. The lying men heard several explosions. However, a few moments later, when the dust settled, the men saw that the monsters were still standing in front of them. But now there were pieces of ice sticking out of their bodies. Without wasting time, Sam rushed towards the monsters, lightning bolts at the ready. He knocked the werewolves off their feet with one blow. After which he raised his fist up and shouted that he would kill them all. Along with the guy's fist, several powerful bolts of lightning fell on the monster. The men sitting nearby were amazed at what they saw. A couple of seconds later, Michael and his subordinates ran up to them, asking if everything was okay. The man reported that the werewolves had fled and they had stopped shooting. Noticing a guy standing nearby, Michael approached him and thanked him for his help. If it weren't for him, everyone here would be dead. Afterwards, the man extended his hand, saying that although he did not know the name of their savior, he was very grateful. At that moment, Sam remembered the photograph of the man holding the baby in his arms. Clenching his fist, he asked why, being so close to his home, the man did not come and save his child. After this, Sam lunged at Michael, intending to hit him. The man allowed the guy to throw him to the ground. As Michael's men pointed their guns at Sam, ready to fire at any moment, Linda covered the boy's back, aiming one ice needle at each of them. The man didn't even think about somehow resisting the guy who attacked him. He lowered his head and asked Sam how his family was doing. The guy was overcome with rage, and asked why he couldn't go and check the condition of his family members himself. Sam said that his wife and children were no longer in this world. The man grabbed Sam's hand and thanked him for the information. After this, he ordered his subordinates to lower their weapons, and said that they were returning. The marshal looked at his commander with sadness. Sam was not happy with the man's reaction to his words, and wanted to catch up with him, but his path was blocked by Marshall, who was standing nearby, who said that there was no point in irritating Michael even more, because he had already suffered enough. He said that his commander was not at all the person Sam might have imagined. Some things cannot be seen right away. Sometime later, the men took Sam and Linda to their hideout. Looking around, the boy asked why there were so many werewolf corpses here. The marshal replied that when the monster attacks became more frequent, their superiors asked them to return to headquarters and be ready. But when they arrived on the scene, the situation had already gotten out of control. They gathered all the survivors and built a shelter in this tunnel. But the werewolves quickly found them, as if someone had given them this information, so there was a very fierce battle here. After their commander died, his deputy took over command. But he also died, so they changed commanders over and over again. Suddenly there was an explosion that took many lives. Ultimately, Michael was the only one left who could take over command. Once inside the tunnel, Marshall explained that it wasn't that Michael didn't want to save his family. They were obligated to protect the people in the shelter, and they had no way to take their family situation into account. The situation also worsened due to the fact that supplies and food became sharply short. Sam asked why they couldn't take the local people and leave. The marshal replied that Michael had already suggested something similar. But the question was, who could guarantee that there was a safer place somewhere? This is why most people don't want to go out and take risks, and they also have a lot of wounded people now, which makes the situation even worse. Sometime later, Sam decided to approach Michael, who was sitting at a distance. He handed the man a piece of paper, saying it was his son's drawing. The guy said that the boy believed until the very end that his father would defeat the werewolves and return for his family. Looking at the drawing of his already dead son, the man began to cry. Turning around, Sam said that he left the three of them in the room, and if Michael managed to return, the guy asked the man to bury them properly. The man asked the boy if he still had the right to meet his family again. The guy asked, almost in a whisper, if he had the right to accuse Michael of anything. Suddenly the man said that his son never liked being called baby. The boy turned around and looked at Michael with a silent question in his eyes. He admitted that he always wanted his son's life to be peaceful and carefree, because he was a very smart and brave boy. With his head down, Sam apologized to the man for his behavior earlier. Suddenly the boy's heart sank again, and he couldn't help but let out a painful groan, which made Michael and Linda worry. Sam was seated on boxes of provisions. The man excitedly asked how he was feeling. The guy replied that he was fine. He just killed several monsters today, which is why he had no strength left. The girl leaned down to kiss Sam, but the guy stopped her, saying that the situation was not that critical. While twirling a lock of hair around her finger, Linda asked him if he really didn't need her help. Michael, who was watching this scene, was convinced that today's youth had become too dissolute. Sam concluded that even if he absorbed the soul of a weak werewolf, his own body would tire too quickly. He also noted that his strength, although not significantly, had increased. Looking at the boy creating lightning in his hand, Michael asked where they got this kind of ability from. Sam replied that he himself did not fully understand everything. But after the appearance of werewolves, some people began to awaken various abilities in themselves. He said that in the shelter where he was previously, there were several other people with abilities. Michael looked at the guy in surprise when he found out that there were other people like him. The next moment, the man grabbed the guy by the shoulders and, not believing what he had heard earlier, asked again if there were any more shelters on this island. Besides this one, Sam replied that there were. He went outside to help find other survivors and medicine. Michael started asking the guy a lot of questions about what, where, and how many people they had already managed to save. Sam said that, initially escaping from the monsters, their refuge was an international school, in which there were about 100 survivors, most of whom were school children, and showed its location on the map. He explained that there were few werewolves in the area, so the danger level was lower. The marshal sighed with relief, saying that they now had somewhere to go. Michael said that this shelter is not a government one, so they may not agree to accept them. Sam replied that there was no need to worry about that. Even though the director of this school was overly authoritarian, he would not refuse to help a person who was capable of fighting. Looking away, Michael said that there were too many monsters here, and they had a lot of wounded and ordinary civilians. Sam said that together with Linda, he will help to fight off the monsters. The man only has a choice whether to persuade the others to take risks in order to transfer resources and go to a new shelter or not. The man asked how many monsters they could handle. Sam replied that he could easily deal with 20 werewolves, but that was assuming they would only block the monsters' attacks. After listening to him, Marshall said that in that case everything should work out for them, because there were only 30 werewolves outside at the moment. A group of guys approached them, and one of them shouted that he could handle at least 100 of these monsters. He asked why Michael so easily believed the words of some strangers. Marshall approached him and asked what he was talking about. Alan believed that he had said everything correctly, because everyone had heard what had been discussed earlier. Alan said the commander needed to use his brain and think about the likelihood that this hideout was real, and how the guy and he alone could hold off 20 werewolves. If Sam really was as strong as he said, the man said he would have to first defeat Alan's comrades, whom he had brought with him. Michael touched the boy's shoulder, saying that Sam needed to convince everyone that his words were not empty words, and then they would follow him. Smiling, the guy asked the man if this was true. Michael told the guy to just fight half-heartedly and not hurt anyone. Stepping forward, Sam promised that he would try to be careful and make his people believe in him. The hero slowly approached the crowd waiting for him, Linda walking next to him. Seeing that Sam was in no hurry, the men began to shout, egging the hero on, saying that his girlfriend had more courage than the guy himself. When Linda stopped, barely containing her anger, Sam took her hand, telling her that he would figure it out on his own. But the girl objected to him. She didn't like the fact that these people were being rude to Sam right in his face and didn't respect him. They deserved that she teach them a lesson. The guy stroked her head, saying that he should do it himself. Then he took a few more steps forward, and pulling on his gloves, shouted for them to all attack at once. The men were taken aback by the guy's overconfidence, and seeing the confusion on their faces, Sam explained that it was easier to finish them all off with one blow than to fight each one separately. Alan shouted that the guy had simply gone crazy, after which he and his friends simultaneously rushed at Sam. While creating lightning, he said that one should never underestimate the enemy. After this, he touched the ground with his palms, conducting electrical discharges through the earth. All the men were paralyzed by powerful shocks that pierced their bodies. Sam shouted for them to get ready for the new trendy hairstyles. After that, electric shocks hit the heads of each of them, causing their hair to stand on end. Walking up to the fallen men, Sam assessed his work and said it looked pretty cool. He noticed that one of them had gone completely bald and apologized, saying that he had slightly miscalculated the voltage. The men admitted defeat, saying that Sam was too strong. Even though the hero had proven his strength to everyone, some still had doubts about whether there really was another refuge, because if there wasn't one, then leaving here would be a simple suicide. Hearing these conversations, Michael approached Sam, saying that he believed this guy. After that, Marshall and a few other guys supported Sam, saying that they trusted him too. The old man stepped forward and asked Michael if it would not be too irresponsible to rely on the unsubstantiated words of a stranger. The man replied that werewolf raids were becoming more frequent, which is why they had many victims and deaths. He said that even if that shelter did not exist, there was still no point in them remaining in one place and waiting for the moment of their death. Michael's speech did not instill confidence in the people. Many doubted and thought that it was a trap. But there were also those who shared the commander's view of the situation, saying that sometimes the situation really needs to be changed. Suddenly they heard a noise outside. Michael radioed the patrol officers, asking what was going on. He was informed that a whole horde of werewolves had suddenly descended upon them. The line of defense had been broken through, and according to rough estimates there were more than 100 monsters. Suddenly the connection was lost. Upon hearing the terrible news, everyone rushed in different directions, hoping to hide from the impending threat. Michael ordered everyone to act according to the previously developed evacuation plan and protect civilians at all costs. After this, the man turned to Sam, asking them to go with the others to the tunnel to help people move to another shelter. The guy asked doubtfully what would happen to the rest. Smiling, Michael replied that sometimes sacrifices have to be made to keep people safe. Then he turned around, shouting at the end that they would try to buy as much time as possible to escape. Sam looked sadly at the retreating backs of the men who were running straight into the arms of death. Having run to the scene, the men began shooting at the monsters. Michael supported everyone, reminding them that they had too much at stake. Suddenly, one of the monsters jumped high into the air, aiming at a man standing nearby. Michael noticed the approaching werewolf too late. The man had long been prepared for death, and was glad that he would finally be able to reunite with his wife and children. But Sam had other thoughts on the matter. He plunged the knife into the chest of the monster, who did not have time to reach his victim. The guy said that he promised the kid to take his father away from here. Turning around, he said that the same applies to all the other fearless warriors. The man smiled, saying that he sensed a fighting spirit in the boy. Sam replied that his determination was stronger today than ever. A few moments later, the hero again entered into battle with the monsters. He created an electric ball in his palm and threw it at his opponent. The werewolf was knocked off his feet by this blow and flew back several meters. Sam felt the power coursing through his veins. When several werewolves rushed at him at once, the boy took a defensive stance, gathering as much strength as possible in his hands. The next moment, he hit the ground and electric discharges struck the werewolves. Linda was at the top at this time, creating ice needles. When Sam carried out his attack, the girl realized that it was her turn. A multitude of ice needles fell from the sky onto the monsters like hail. As Linda sat down next to Sam, he praised her. Suddenly he felt something strange. The guy saw clots of animal energy that were floating in the air. Suddenly, another werewolf appeared and lunged at Sam and Linda. The girl reacted faster than the guy and began to create an ice shield to protect Sam. But the barrier she created was broken by one blow from the werewolf, and Linda herself was thrown back. Michael was attracted by the noise from the side, and when he turned around to see what was going on, he saw Sam and Linda lying on the ground next to the monster. He shouted to his subordinates to hurry to their aid. Michael and another man were at Sam's side in an instant and began shooting at the enemy. The worried hero asked if Linda was okay, and the girl nodded her head. Suddenly his heart began to squeeze again and he let out a painful groan again. Seeing Sam in this state again, Linda was scared. The hero thought that if with each kill of werewolves their souls continued to be absorbed by him, then the negative effect would only grow. But he also could not be sure that Michael and his guys would hardly be able to withstand so many monsters. The man turned around and shouted at Sam to get out of there as quickly as possible. Getting up from the ground, the guy replied that he was fine, he just spent too much energy this time. Sam looked at the backs of these people who didn't have any superpowers, but still fearlessly sacrificed their lives for others. He and Linda didn't want to become a burden to anyone simply because they weren't feeling well. The hero activated his ability again. He thought that since they were in a world where the end of the world had come, they should face their death without fear and save those they could. A moment later, Sam rushed forward, engulfed in electric shocks. A few minutes later, the ground was strewn with numerous monster corpses. All the wounded were given medical assistance. Those whose wounds were not so serious went back to base, helping each other. Michael, who approached the seated Sam and Linda, admitted that at first he was very worried about whether everything would go according to plan, or whether the guy would not have the strength to continue the battle. Afterwards, the man sat down next to the guy, and patting him on the shoulder, said that although Sam was still young, he was the most fearless of all those present. The guy exhaled tiredly and asked the man to stop making fun of him, because his hands were still shaking from fear. Michael replied that the guy shouldn't belittle himself, and that he had done a great job. At that moment, Marshall approached them. Rising to his feet, Michael asked if the evacuation had been successful. Having received a positive answer, he and the men standing nearby smiled happily. Afterwards, Michael extended his hand to Sam, saying that it was time for them to move on too. The hero took the offered hand and smiled. All this time, they were being watched unnoticed through binoculars. France didn't expect Sam to join the group of ex-military men and take their side. He lowered the binoculars and said that in that case the guy shouldn't blame him for the cruelty he had shown, because he himself had chosen his future fate. After this, France ordered the release of everyone they had locked in a nearby truck. When high-level monsters came out from there, the man gave them the order to destroy everyone in the enemy camp. A few moments later, several dozen werewolves rushed in the direction indicated to them. Sam and Linda, accompanied by other military personnel, passed through the tunnel. Michael gave the order to plant explosives in order to blow up the place later and prevent the monsters from using this passage. The man instructed others to search for their surviving comrades. Looking at him, Sam thought that if he really wanted to save as many people as possible, then he should follow his example. If he were in charge, he wouldn't even think about covering the rear by destroying the tracks. A few moments later, one of the men shouted that he had found one survivor, but he was badly wounded. Michael rushed to his aid. The man touched his commander's shoulder, telling him that they shouldn't waste extra bandages because he wouldn't survive with a wound like that. Michael interrupted the man, saying that he would definitely survive. Suddenly, he was contacted by radio and informed that another horde of werewolves was already within a radius of 1 kilometer from them. He asked if they had managed to plant the explosives. Michael was horrified when he was told that the detonator was nowhere to be found. Sam decided to intervene and said that he would block the passage and buy them some time. The man approached the boy, saying that he was too weak now and he did not want to put his life at risk. Contacting his subordinate by radio, Michael asked him to provide him with the necessary materials for the explosion, and he ordered the others to take the people as far away from here as possible. Sam shouted that his strength had been restored and he was ready to fight again. But Michael interrupted him, saying that he would not accept any objections. Suddenly, the wounded man intervened in their argument, saying that he would stay there anyway. Taking a grenade out of his pocket, he said that he still had one left in reserve and that should be enough. So the man asked that they all leave from there together. Michael looked at his subordinate with horror, about to object, but the man got ahead of him, shouting that if they didn't leave, he would blow them all up along with himself. If they don't hurry, the werewolves will be running here any minute. Michael gritted his teeth in frustration. He had nothing to say in response. He saluted the brave warrior with tears in his eyes. Then he turned around, telling Sam that they should hurry. Kevin asked the guy to make sure all the civilians got to the new location safely. He didn't want his sacrifice to be in vain. Closing his eyes, Sam promised that he would definitely make sure of this. The death of this warrior will be a great feat, and he will not allow it all to be in vain. Hearing Sam's words, Kevin smiled. The monsters were already approaching them. When the werewolves had gotten close enough, Kevin said it was time for them all to go to hell together. After that, he pulled out the pin with his teeth. The next moment there was a loud explosion. Sam, Linda, and Michael managed to reach the members of their group ahead of them safely. Michael and Sam could not share all the joy of their appearance. They turned around, looking sadly at the collapsed passage. A few moments later, Michael turned to Marshall, saying that they would be stopping for a 15-minute break. Afterwards, the man looked around, quickly examining everyone they had managed to save. Sam approached him and said that they would have to walk more than one day to reach the shelter, and asked if the man had a travel plan. He replied that it was not safe to move at night, so he intended to find a place to stay for the night in a neighboring area. Looking sadly at the floor, the man said that there shouldn't be any problems because he knows this district like the back of his hand. Sam slapped Michael on the shoulder and said that he could visit his wife and children on the way. Suddenly, a werewolf's roar was heard, attracting everyone's attention. Everyone looked towards the tunnel, and from the settling clouds of dust they saw the huge silhouette of a monster. Michael walked up to his men, telling them to be ready. In the darkness of the tunnel, the monster's eyes flashed dangerously red. The next moment he let out an even more terrifying roar. Michael and the others began firing at the werewolf. Sam and Linda realized that they were facing a strengthened monster. Activating his abilities, the boy rushed forward, shouting at the military to step back. They were no match for a monster of this level. But it was too late. The werewolf had already attacked them. He grabbed a nearby car and intended to throw it at the military. The men lying on the floor watched this in horror. Suddenly Sam appeared in front of them, shouting at them to run away. He tried to hold back the monster's onslaught, but a few moments later the guy was thrown aside. Sam didn't expect there to be such a big difference in strength between them. He told Michael that now they needed to take away the ordinary people, and they could leave this monster to him and Linda. But the man objected, saying that this werewolf was many times stronger than the previous ones, and they couldn't handle it alone. Sam said that although werewolves are strong, they are not particularly smart. He was confident that Michael alone should lead the escape operation. So even if they didn't defeat the monster, it would be much easier to escape knowing that everyone else was safe. The man didn't know what to say to Sam, and smiled, wishing them luck. For some inexplicable reason, he believed that this boy would succeed. After this, Sam turned to Linda, saying that they would proceed according to the old plan. The next moment they rushed towards the werewolf. The monster covered himself from the ice needles the girl fired at him. At that moment, Sam decided to attack the werewolf. The guy raised his fist to strike, and his opponent followed his example and also raised his clawed paw. However, instead of striking, Sam grabbed the monster by its outstretched paw. After which, pushing off from her, he did a somersault in the air. The monster raised its other paw to strike while the boy had his back to him. At the same time, Linda used ice. Sam jumped again, raising his fist again to strike. The next moment, Sam dealt a powerful blow to the monster. This action of the guy made the werewolf lose his temper. The hero jumped to the side, shouting Linda's name. The girl had already managed to accumulate enough energy and was ready to attack. A moment later, tall blocks of ice appeared one after another, surrounding the monster's body. Sam attacked the werewolf again, but the monster was not going to lose to his victim so easily. A powerful electrical discharge erupted from his body, harming Linda and Sam. They landed a few steps away from the enemy. The man who was watching this fight from the shadows said that if it was an ordinary high-level werewolf, they would not have any trouble dealing with him. Thanks to France's special skill of controlling the minds of living beings, this monster has become much stronger. The man was sure that Sam and Linda would die right here, because the monstrous strength of the werewolf combined with France's intelligence was an invincible weapon. Sam managed to dodge the werewolf's furious attack. However, the next moment, several high-voltage discharges hit his body. Immediately after this, the monster picked up several stones from the ground and threw them at Sam. The guy managed to dodge a few but was caught in some places. Sam didn't understand what was happening. This werewolf fought completely differently than the others. A moment later, the guy flew into the boxes of provisions. Linda noticed that Sam was unable to cope with this monster. The girl created many ice needles in the blink of an eye. As the ice needles reached the monster, he activated his ability, and multiple electrical discharges surrounded his body, breaking the flying needles. But the girl turned out to be stronger. The reduced needles managed to break through the defense, and a few moments later, the monster fell to the ground. The werewolf did not receive any mortal wounds, and, bending down, he quickly ran towards her, avoiding the needles. When he finally got close enough to her, he raised one paw to strike. Linda froze in fear. Suddenly, a car door flew into the werewolf's back. Sam ran towards the monster screaming. He managed to hit the werewolf, causing him to fly back. After this, the guy asked Linda to distract the werewolf with ice needles. Having said this, Sam immediately rushed towards the monster to attack it again, and the girl immediately fulfilled the request by creating ice needles. The werewolf covered his face to prevent the ice needles from hitting him. As Sam was about to hit him, the werewolf jumped back, but the boy followed him, not giving up his attempts to strike the werewolf. However, the monster avoided his attack again. The werewolf jumped back a few meters. He was starting to get irritated by these stupid attacks of the guy. The next moment, the monster let out another roar. Sam felt electric shocks run through his body. The werewolf copied Sam's style and slammed both hands into the ground, sending powerful electrical discharges into everything within a few meters. Linda also felt strong electric shocks running through her body. Sam didn't notice how a werewolf approached him from behind. The next moment, the monster attacked the guy. He flew into the wall, hitting his back painfully. Sam saw the monster form an electric ball in its hand and was about to throw it at the guy. He smiled, thinking that his end would come here too. Suddenly, Linda appeared in front of the guy, taking the blow. Sam managed to land back on the ground with the girl in his arms. Looking at the girl's back, he saw a deep mark from the monster's claws. He looked at the girl's pale face and asked how she felt. The girl did not answer, but only extended her hand to Sam's face. But the next second, her hand fell limply to the floor. At that moment, Sam's heart skipped a beat. He hugged the girl tighter, asking her to open her eyes. But despite all his pleas, the girl's eyes remained closed. The werewolf stood watching the guy the whole time. Suddenly, France felt strange energy fluctuations. As the man approached Sam, he realized that they were coming from him. He decided not to miss the opportunity, and finally get rid of the guy who could cause him a lot of problems in the future. At that moment, Michael appeared in the truck with Marshall, taking a gun. The man climbed out of the window and began shooting at the monster, not understanding why Sam was not doing anything. Michael hit the werewolf's legs, weakening him for a few moments. After that, he got out of the truck and shouted for Sam to get inside as quickly as possible. He noticed that many electric discharges were running through the guy's body. After putting the girl on the ground, Sam said that they needed to get out of here because he could no longer control himself. Michael had a bad feeling about this. Sam shouted for the man to run away from here, after which the power overwhelmed him, taking control of the guy's mind. At that moment, the monster jumped onto the truck, after which he rushed at Sam, paying no attention to Michael. The guy managed to deliver a strong blow to the werewolf's stomach. Because of this, the monster flew back several meters. Sam continued to stand in place, watching as the monster's massive body fell to the ground. France couldn't understand where the guy got so much strength from. The next moment, Sam also roared, causing powerful electric shocks, just like the monster had done a few minutes ago. This picture made Fran's blood run wild. The monster rushed at the guy, but he didn't let the werewolf get closer, attacking the enemy with electricity. After that growling, Sam rushed forward. The monster stepped back from the blow and also rushed at the guy, raising its clawed paw to attack. But Sam intercepted his paw, passing electricity through it through the enemy's body. The next moment, Sam recoiled from the monster, holding the werewolf's severed arm in his hand. The guy increased the voltage of the current, and the limb he was holding broke into several pieces. At that very moment, the monster attacked the guy, releasing a strong charge of electricity. But Sam managed to dodge it, jumping up. After which he counterattacked the werewolf, slamming him into the ground. The pain the monster felt was transmitted to France, who controlled the werewolf. The man didn't expect this guy to be so strong. He developed a desire to possess this guy's strength. Having dealt with the monster, Sam approached Michael to check if everything was okay with him. Not noticing any damage on the man's body, the guy walked on, ignoring all the questions addressed to him. He walked up to the girl lying on the ground and picked her up in his arms. When Sam noticed that she was no longer breathing, multiple lightning bolts began to randomly strike the ground around the guy, after which he lost consciousness. Melissa also noticed this phenomenon and realized that Sam was having problems. Sometime later, Sam regained consciousness and saw a girl hanging over him. She admitted that she didn't expect the guy to be able to wake up after defeating a high-level monster. The situation they were in embarrassed the guy, and he tried to move away from the girl. But she told him not to move. Although he managed to keep his mind, his soul was greatly weakened. After touching her forehead to the guy, she said that she would show him the way to improve the soul of the beast. The girl sincerely did not understand what attracted Linda to this guy. She said that if Linda was going to make a death contract with him, she wouldn't stop her from doing it. Sam asked what happened to Linda. The girl replied that she was fine, and his friend had taken her to a safe place. Having received an answer from her, the guy asked who the girl in front of him was. Tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear, she replied that so much time had passed that she herself had forgotten who she was. Approaching his face, the girl whispered that she only remembered that after the great battle between humans and demons, she left her physical shell and fell into a deep sleep, becoming one with her blood descendants. She explained that the descendants are so-called guides for people like her. The main purpose of her and other creatures like her existence is to tell about what really happened, so that people can understand how to resist it. Sam was surprised when he heard that the girl was somehow connected with the great war between demons and humans. She decided that to make it clearer to him, she should begin her story from the moment when God descended to this earth. The girl said that at the cost of his own life, God created everything that exists on this earth, and, relying on the laws he left behind, living organisms began to reproduce. At that time, neither races nor classes existed. This was so until the devil, who is the enemy of God, entered this pure and undefiled land. He was afraid of being destroyed by the new gods that might appear. Therefore, the devil began to enchant people. Thus his followers began to appear, called the demon race. For a long time the two races were at odds with each other, until a special person appeared. Abel wanted to put an end to this endless feud and challenge the demons. He led humanity and eradicated the entire demon race on this earth. However, the devil managed to make his move, placing demonic forces in the hearts of all living things. So although the demons disappeared, conflicts between people did not stop. Every time the conflicts reached their peak, new demons were born. When something like this happens, all living things mutate under the influence of the devil's power. Sam wondered who the devil really was. The girl touched the guy's chest, saying that he does not have a physical shell, he lives in the hearts of people. She said that those monsters that were killed were demons. People consumed by greed also become demons. If Sam had not withstood the temptation of the beast's soul, he would have become one of them too. Embarrassed by her touch, the boy asked if there was any way to resist demons. Smiling, she replied that everything was not as hopeless as it seemed at first glance. She explained that because the demons were created by the devil, they needed a leader, who was overthrown a long time ago, and they would fight each other desperately until they chose a new demon king to lead them. If a person capable of killing the new demon king appears, the evil essence in the souls of all living things will dissipate without a trace. From her words, the guy understood that until this time, people and demons were in the same boat. The girl confirmed his guess. A demon doesn't have to be evil, just as a person doesn't have to be kind. After that, her fingers closed around the guy's neck. Smiling slyly, she said that even though she looked like a conductor, she didn't necessarily have to be as kind as they were.